Across the decades, basketball has been shaped by more than individual stars. It has been defined by dynasties, teams whose impact went beyond wins to change how the game felt and how it was watched. These dynasties were more than trophies. They were movements that shifted culture and created memories that still echo. Tonight we visit two of the most iconic runs in NBA history. First, the Showtime Lakers of the 1980s, a team that turned speed, precision, and joy into theater through the leadership of Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Then the Chicago Bulls of the 1990s, where Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen paired structure with poise to build a standard for finishing seasons. Settle in as we trace coaches, players, arenas, and moments that became timeless history. If this kind of calm basketball history helps you relax or learn, please like the video and subscribe so you do not miss future episodes. The Showtime Lakers of the 1980s were more than a basketball team. They were a spectacle, a movement, and a symbol of Los Angeles itself. Behind the leadership of Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and coach Pat Riley, the Lakers lit up arenas and television screens alike. Showtime was fast breaks at full speed, Kareem's unstoppable skyhook, and Magic's smile leading the charge. This dynasty was more than just wins. It was an era where entertainment and dominance blended, leaving an unforgettable mark on basketball history. Chapter 1. The Arrival of Magic. The summer of 1979 was a crossroads for the Los Angeles Lakers. The franchise had already built a reputation as one of the league's proudest, but the energy that once surrounded it had begun to fade. The 1970s had been uneven years. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had been acquired from the Milwaukee Bucks in 1975, and he delivered as advertised. His skyhook was still one of the most unstoppable shots in the game, and his quiet dominance gave the team a steady star. Yet despite Kareem's excellence, the Lakers lacked an identity that matched the city of Los Angeles. The Forum in Inglewood remained a glamorous venue. Celebrities still filled the front rows. But while the lights outside shined brightly, the product on the floor often lacked excitement. The team needed more than a reliable scorer. It needed energy, it needed charisma, it needed a new kind of star. The NBA itself was at a similar point. The league had legendary players, Kareem, Julius Erving, Bill Walton, and others, but the overall spotlight was dim. Some finals games were still being shown on tape delay. Television contracts were modest, and the NBA had not yet become a staple in living rooms across the nation. Baseball and football drew the bigger audiences. Basketball had passionate followers, but it had not yet broken through to mainstream dominance. That summer, the Lakers held the #1 pick in the 1979 NBA draft, thanks to a trade made years earlier. The selection gave them a chance to add new life to their roster. They chose a point guard from Michigan State University named Ervin Johnson Jr. By then, the nation already knew him by a single word: Magic. Magic Johnson had built his reputation on college courts. His Michigan State Spartans had defeated Larry Bird's Indiana State team in the 1979 NCAA championship, a game that remains one of the most watched in college history. That matchup introduced fans to a rivalry that would continue for years to come. But Magic was more than a rival to Bird. He was a unique presence in his own right. Standing 6 feet 9 inches tall, Magic was unusually large for a point guard. Most players at the position were shorter, quicker, and focused on handling and passing. Magic combined those skills with size, strength, and vision. His passing was extraordinary. His ability to see opportunities before they developed gave him a quality that seemed almost impossible to teach. And perhaps most importantly, he played with joy. Magic's smile lit up arenas. His energy lifted teammates. His creativity delighted crowds. He didn't just make plays, he made memories. For Los Angeles, a city built on entertainment, his arrival was perfectly timed. The Lakers now had a star who could make basketball into a spectacle. From the start of his rookie season, Magic showed why he had been chosen first overall. He filled stat sheets with points, rebounds, and assists. He pushed the pace in transition, leading fast breaks that seemed to stretch defenses to their breaking points. He delivered no-look passes that froze defenders and brought fans to their feet. Kareem remained the anchor in the middle, but with Magic running the offense, the Lakers found a new rhythm. The team's success built quickly. Under head coach Paul Westhead, they encouraged a fast style of play. The ball moved up the court with speed. Magic thrived in that system, finding open teammates before opponents could react. Kareem's skyhook remained the steady foundation, but now it was complemented by Magic's passing and leadership. Other players, like Jamal Wilkes and Michael Cooper, filled crucial roles. The pieces fit together, and the Lakers surged. The regular season brought excitement back to the Forum. The games became events once more. Fans filled the seats, and the buzz of possibility grew louder with each passing week. Magic's enthusiasm was contagious, and the Lakers roster began to reflect it. They weren't just playing basketball, they were performing it. As the playoffs began, Los Angeles looked ready for a deep run. In the Western Conference, they advanced past their opponents with a mix of Kareem's inside dominance and Magic's all-around impact. Each game reinforced the sense that something special was taking shape. The NBA Finals matched the Lakers against the Philadelphia 76ers, led by Julius Dr. J. Irving. Known for his soaring dunks and graceful play, a star who had defined the American Basketball Association before its merger with the NBA. The showdown promised drama, and it delivered. Kareem dominated the early games, carrying the scoring load and asserting his presence in the paint. But in Game 5, disaster struck. Kareem injured his ankle, leaving his status uncertain. With the Lakers leading the series 3-2, they now faced the challenge of finishing the finals without their most experienced star. Game 6 in Philadelphia became the stage for Magic Johnson. On that night, Magic played every position. Though he was the point guard, he started at center in Kareem's place. Over the course of the game, he shifted from guard to forward to center, filling roles as needed. He scored 42 points, grabbed 15 rebounds, and handed out 7 assists. His energy never faded. He defended, he led fast breaks, and he controlled the floor. At just 20 years old, he put together one of the greatest performances in NBA history. The Lakers defeated the 76ers, clinching the championship. Confetti fell, teammates embraced, and Magic Johnson's legend was born. In his very first season, he had delivered the ultimate prize. The image of a rookie dominating on the final stage captured the imagination of fans and established him as one of the league's brightest stars. For the Lakers, it was more than a title. It was the beginning of an era. Showtime was not yet the official label, but it was already alive on the floor. The fast breaks, the joy, the creativity, the balance of Kareem's steadiness and Magic's energy, these elements would define the next decade. The victory also carried weight for the NBA itself. Magic's performance, paired with Bird's success in Boston, gave the league the rivalry it needed. The two stars had entered the league together, already linked by their college clash. Now they would elevate the NBA to new heights. Fans tuned in, television contracts grew. The NBA was no longer just another sport. It was becoming an experience. The 1979-80 season was the foundation of Showtime. The Forum transformed into a stage, Los Angeles into the capital of basketball entertainment, and the NBA into a league on the rise. The spark had been lit, and the decade ahead promised brilliance. Today, when fans watch players like LeBron James or Nikola Jokic dominate games across multiple roles, they are watching echoes of Magic Johnson's legacy. His ability to play every position and lift a team with vision and joy reshaped basketball forever, and that influence continues to guide the NBA's brightest stars. Magic Johnson's arrival was more than a rookie debut. It was the start of Showtime, a dynasty that would transform the Lakers and the NBA. With Kareem's steady hand and Magic's youthful brilliance, Los Angeles had found its identity. What began in 1979 promised an unforgettable decade of dominance. Chapter 2: The Riley Era begins. The Los Angeles Lakers' 1980 championship had been a remarkable story. A rookie named Magic Johnson had stepped into the NBA Finals and carried the team to glory while filling in for an injured Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was the kind of performance that could have been the climax of a career. Yet for the Lakers, it was only the beginning of something much larger. The pieces of Showtime were in place, but the Lakers still needed a guiding voice to shape those pieces into a dynasty. That voice arrived in the form of a coach named Pat Riley. Pat Riley was not the obvious choice when he first entered the Lakers coaching staff. A former NBA player himself, Riley had been a role player with the Lakers during the late 1960s and early 1970s, contributing toughness and hustle on the court. After his playing days ended, he worked as a broadcaster before joining the team as an assistant coach. He was not yet considered a master tactician or a household name in basketball circles, but he carried within him a rare combination of charisma, discipline, and adaptability that would soon prove invaluable. In 1981, a coaching shakeup changed the course of the Lakers' history. Paul Westhead, who had led the team to the 1980 championship, began to clash with players, including Magic Johnson. Magic wanted a faster, more free-flowing offense, while Westhead's system leaned more rigid. Frustration grew and tension spilled into public view. Early in the 1981-82 season, the Lakers made the decision to part ways with Westhead. Into that void stepped Pat Riley, who was elevated to the role of head coach. From the beginning, Riley established himself as a leader who could balance the Lakers' need for structure with their natural flair. He believed in discipline, conditioning, and preparation. At the same time, he understood that the team's greatest strength was its ability to run, to dazzle, and to entertain. Riley did not try to suppress the Lakers' personality. Instead, he shaped it into something sharper. Showtime was about speed and spectacle, but under Riley, it also became about precision and control. The 1981-82 Lakers quickly adapted to their new leader. Magic Johnson thrived under Riley's system, pushing the ball up the floor with confidence and joy. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, though in the later stages of his career, remained a dominant force, scoring with efficiency and anchoring the defense. Jamal Wilkes provided smooth scoring on the wing, while Michael Cooper's defensive prowess gave the Lakers balance. Riley emphasized teamwork, encouraging players to embrace their roles while contributing to a larger vision. The results spoke for themselves. The Lakers stormed through the season, regaining their rhythm and confidence. Fans at the Forum once again witnessed a team that played with joy, but also with sharp execution. Riley, with his slicked-back hair and commanding presence, became a symbol of the Lakers' new identity. On the sidelines, he radiated intensity. He demanded focus in practice, but when the games began, he gave his players freedom to perform. The 1982 playoffs brought the Lakers back to the finals, once again facing the Philadelphia 76ers and Julius Erving. This time, the Lakers left no doubt. They dominated the series in 6 games, with Magic Johnson earning Finals MVP honors for his outstanding play. The victory gave Riley his first championship as a head coach and solidified Showtime as more than a style. It was now a dynasty in the making. As the decade unfolded, Riley's Lakers became the model of sustained excellence. They reached the NBA Finals year after year, battling rivals like the Celtics and Pistons. Under Riley, the Lakers captured 4 championships in the 1980s. His leadership ensured that Showtime was not just a flash of brilliance, but a long-lasting movement. Part of Riley's genius lay in his ability to blend discipline with flair. Practices were intense, often grueling, He expected players to be in peak condition. He drilled them on defensive rotations and emphasized attention to detail. Yet when game time arrived, he unleashed their creativity. Magic was encouraged to lead fast breaks. Worthy and Scott were given opportunities to shine. Kareem continued to dominate inside. Cooper locked down opponents. Every piece had its role, and together they formed a team that dazzled fans and overwhelmed opponents. Off the court, Riley also became a cultural icon. His tailored suits, slicked back hair, and sharp demeanor made him one of the most recognizable coaches in sports. In Los Angeles, a city defined by image, Riley fit the stage perfectly. He was more than a coach. He was part of the Lakers show. The Lakers of the Riley era did more than win games. They helped elevate the NBA itself. Televised games showcased the drama and excitement of Showtime. Ratings soared. Fans across the country tuned in to see Magic's passes, Kareem's skyhook, and Riley's intensity on the sidelines. The Lakers were not just a team, they were entertainment for millions. The essence of Showtime, sharpened under Riley, endures in basketball today. Teams that run, share the ball, and entertain while winning championships reflect the influence of that era. Riley's approach, structure without suffocation, freedom within discipline, remains a blueprint for coaches managing stars in the modern NBA. Today, when fans watch coaches like Steve Kerr balance the Golden State Warriors' free-flowing offense with disciplined defense, they are seeing echoes of Pat Riley's Lakers. His model of leadership still guides the way dynasties are built in modern basketball. Pat Riley's arrival transformed Showtime from a spark into a dynasty. His discipline gave shape to the Lakers' flair, and his leadership carried them to sustained greatness. The Lakers of the 1980s became a cultural and sporting phenomenon, and Riley's influence helped ensure that Showtime would endure far beyond its decade. Chapter 3: Clashes with the Celtics. The rivalry between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics is one of the most enduring in all of sports. By the time the 1980s arrived, the history between these two franchises was already deep. The Celtics had dominated the early decades of the NBA, with Bill Russell leading them to 11 championships in 13 years. The Lakers, though successful, had often been on the losing end of that rivalry, falling short in several finals matchups against Boston. When the Showtime Lakers rose to prominence, the Celtics were waiting, and the battles that followed defined the decade. The Celtics of the 1980s were led by Larry Bird, a forward from French Lick, Indiana. Bird had entered the NBA the same year as Magic Johnson, and the two had already faced each other in the 1979 NCAA championship. Their arrival created a perfect narrative. Bird, with his sharp shooting, relentless competitiveness, and unshakable confidence, became the face of Boston basketball. Magic, with his flair, charisma, and leadership, represented Los Angeles. Their styles were different, their personalities contrasted, and their fan bases could not have been more distinct. Together, they carried the NBA into a new era. The first true final showdown between Magic's Lakers and Bird's Celtics came in 1984. The series carried immense weight. Boston fans long remembered the Celtics' dominance over the Lakers, while Los Angeles fans longed to erase decades of frustration. For Magic and Bird, the finals represented more than another chapter in their rivalry. It was a chance to prove whose style could dominate at the highest level. The 1984 finals were hard-fought. Games were physical, emotions ran high, and the competition was fierce. The Celtics won in 7 games, with Bird earning Finals MVP honors. For Lakers fans, it was another painful reminder of Boston's grip on their rivalry. For the Celtics, it was validation that their tradition of toughness still reigned supreme. Yet the loss only fueled the Lakers. Under Pat Riley's leadership, the team prepared for another run. They knew they would meet Boston again, and when they did, they wanted to be ready. That rematch came swiftly. In 1985, the Lakers and Celtics clashed once again in the finals. The series began poorly for Los Angeles, with Boston delivering a lopsided victory in Game 1, remembered as the Memorial Day Massacre. Critics doubted the Lakers' ability to recover, but the team rallied. Magic, Kareem, and their teammates played with determination. Over 6 games, the Lakers regained control, and in Game 6, they clinched the championship in Boston Garden. For the first time in franchise history, the Lakers defeated the Celtics in the finals. The victory carried enormous meaning. It broke the Celtics' stranglehold and proved that Showtime could overcome its greatest rival. The rivalry did not end there. In 1987, the two teams met once more in the finals. By then, the Lakers were fully entrenched in Showtime basketball. Magic Johnson, now in his prime, orchestrated the offense with brilliance. James Worthy had emerged as a finals hero, delivering clutch performances on the biggest stage. Kareem, though older, remained effective. The Celtics, led by Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, were still formidable. The 1987 finals showcased some of the rivalry's greatest moments. In Game 4, Magic delivered what became known as the Junior Skyhook, a running hook shot in the closing seconds that sealed a critical victory for Los Angeles. The shot symbolized both Magic's creativity and the Lakers' resilience. Los Angeles went on to win the series in 6 games, further cementing their dominance of the decade. The battles between the Lakers and Celtics were more than just games. They were cultural events. East Coast grit clashed with West Coast glamour. Boston's tradition and toughness faced Los Angeles's flair and spectacle. Fans across the nation took sides, and television audiences grew dramatically. The NBA Finals became must-watch television, broadcast live and drawing millions of viewers. Through it all, the rivalry elevated the league. Magic and Bird were the faces of the NBA, their rivalry drawing attention even from those who had never followed basketball before. The Lakers and Celtics represented not just teams, but ideas about the game and about sports itself. Their clashes gave the NBA storylines that carried from one season to the next, building anticipation and drama that fueled the league's rise. By the late 1980s, the Lakers had secured their place as the dominant team of the decade. Boston remained a fierce rival, but Los Angeles had broken through the shadow of past failures. The Showtime Lakers had written their own legacy, not just as champions, but as conquerors of the very team that had long defined success in the NBA. The rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird continued even beyond their playing days. They became friends later in life, sharing mutual respect for what they had built together. Both men acknowledged that their careers would not have been the same without the other. Their rivalry had defined the 1980s, but their respect defined the years that followed. When fans today watch rivalries like the Golden State Warriors against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the 2010s, or the ongoing battles between the Lakers and Celtics in modern seasons, they are witnessing echoes of the 1980s. Magic and Bird proved that rivalries can elevate not only teams, but entire leagues. The clashes between the Lakers and Celtics in the 1980s were more than games. They were battles of style, personality, and legacy. For Los Angeles, defeating Boston meant claiming true greatness. For the NBA, it meant finding its stage. Showtime had conquered its fiercest rival, and basketball had reached new heights. Chapter 4: Back-to-Back Glory. The late 1980s were a time of triumph for the Los Angeles Lakers. By then, Showtime was no longer a rising idea, but an established reality. The team had weathered challenges, conquered rivals, and captured championships. Yet in sports, greatness is never satisfied with one victory. True dynasties are defined by sustained success, by the ability to win again when the pressure is greatest. For the Showtime Lakers, that moment came in 1987 and 1988, when they achieved what many thought was impossible, winning back-to-back NBA championships. The 1987 season had been one of the most complete campaigns in franchise history. Magic Johnson had fully stepped into the role of leader. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, though older, remained a steady force inside. James Worthy had blossomed into an all-star talent, capable of dominating games with his scoring and speed. Michael Cooper continued to anchor the defense, frustrating opponents with relentless energy. Byron Scott added perimeter scoring, while AC Green brought hustle and strength. Under Pat Riley, the Lakers blended flair with discipline, fast breaks with half-court execution. During the 1987 playoffs, the Lakers once again advanced through the Western Conference. They dispatched opponents with confidence, their mix of veteran leadership and youthful energy proving too much to handle. The finals brought yet another showdown with the Boston Celtics. By this point, the rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird had become the defining storyline of the NBA. Their clashes drew national attention, and fans across the country tuned in to see which star would prevail. The series lived up to the hype. The Celtics remained formidable, led by Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. But the Lakers were relentless. In Game 4, Magic delivered one of the most memorable plays in NBA history, the Junior Skyhook, a running hook shot in the closing moments that sealed victory and shifted momentum. Los Angeles went on to win the series in 6 games, securing their 4th championship of the decade. For Magic, the triumph was especially meaningful. He earned Finals MVP honors, solidifying his place as the face of the league. Yet even as they celebrated, the Lakers knew the challenge ahead. In NBA history, repeating as champions had proven difficult. Injuries, fatigue, and the hunger of rivals often derailed dynasties. The 1988 season would test whether the Lakers could sustain their greatness. That year, the Lakers faced adversity. Kareem was in his 40s, and questions arose about his endurance. Magic shouldered more responsibility, orchestrating the offense while also increasing his scoring. James Worthy elevated his game, becoming a reliable star in high-pressure moments. Riley pushed his team hard, demanding peak conditioning and preparation. His famous phrase, "No rebounds, no rings," echoed through practices and games. The Western Conference playoffs tested the Lakers. They battled through tough series, including a 7-game fight against the Utah Jazz. But the team's resilience shone through, and once again, they reached the NBA Finals. Their opponent was the Detroit Pistons, a team rising to prominence with a rugged physical style that earned them the nickname Bad Boys. Led by Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and Bill Laimbeer, the Pistons presented a new kind of challenge. The 1988 Finals became a war of attrition. Games were intense, physical, and dramatic. Detroit's defense battered the Lakers, but Los Angeles responded with grit. The defining moment came in Game 7. With the season and dynasty on the line, James Worthy delivered the performance of his career. He scored 36 points, grabbed 16 rebounds, and handed out 10 assists, recording a triple-double that led the Lakers to victory. Worthy earned Finals MVP honors, and the Lakers completed the repeat. The accomplishment was historic. No team had won back-to-back championships in nearly 2 decades. The Lakers had cemented themselves not just as champions, but as a true dynasty. Magic, Kareem, Worthy, and their teammates had answered every question. They had survived rivalries, endured adversity, and emerged victorious once more. For Pat Riley, the back-to-back titles validated his demanding style. His emphasis on discipline and conditioning had paid off. For Kareem, it was another jewel in a career filled with accomplishments. For Magic, it was further proof that he was not only a star, but also a leader who could carry his team through any challenge. And for James Worthy, the 1988 Finals became his defining moment. The Lakers' back-to-back glory was more than a basketball achievement. It was a cultural milestone. Los Angeles embraced the team as a symbol of resilience and excellence. The Forum rocked with energy. Television audiences grew even larger. Showtime had reached its peak, captivating not only basketball fans but also the broader public. When fans today watch the Golden State Warriors battle through grueling finals runs, or when dynasties like the San Antonio Spurs sustained excellence over time, they echo the challenge the Lakers faced in the late 1980s. Winning once is difficult. Winning again defines greatness. The back-to-back championships of 1987 and 1988 represented the pinnacle of Showtime. For the Lakers, it was proof of resilience, talent, and unity. For basketball, it was a reminder that dynasties endure not only through brilliance, but also through perseverance. Showtime had reached its summit, and its glow still endures. Chapter 5: Challenges and Adaptation. The glow of back-to-back championships lingered in Los Angeles, but the path ahead would not be smooth. The Lakers had scaled the summit in 1987 and 1988, proving that Showtime was more than spectacle. It was substance forged through discipline and talent. Yet dynasties attract challengers. As the 1980s neared their end, a new style, born of friction and force, met the Lakers at center court. The league's mood shifted. Games grew more physical. Possessions slowed in key moments, and defenses tightened like a vice. Against that pressure, the Lakers would need to adapt. They had built a dynasty on speed and precision. Now, they would be tested on resilience. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in his 40s, an age nearly unheard of for an elite center. His skyhook still floated with grace, but recovery between games took longer. The team adjusted by distributing responsibilities more widely. Magic Johnson's role expanded from orchestrator to fulcrum, a steady presence who could score, pass, or control tempo on demand. James Worthy, whose athletic bursts once punctuated fast breaks, developed a sturdier half-court rhythm, finding angles in tight space. Michael Cooper, long the defensive heartbeat, conserved energy for crucial matchups. Byron Scott worked to keep his stroke true, even when defenders bodied him at the perimeter. Under Pat Riley, details sharpened. Spacing, rebounding responsibility, rotation timing. The Lakers had no interest in surrendering their throne. The Western Conference began to mirror the Lakers' relentless preparation. Teams studied their pace and worked to remove oxygen from the floor. They denied passing lanes, bumped cutters, and turned open hardwood into narrow corridors. The Lakers countered with subtler movement and crisp reads, shifting from a blaze of fast-break light to a more deliberate candle that still warmed the game. Where Showtime once outran opponents, now it often outthought them. A late clock swing pass replaced an early lane lob. A patient post entry replaced a blind sprint. Adaptation did not mean abandoning identity. It meant preserving it through a different shape. The greatest challenge, however, waited in the East. The Detroit Pistons, labeled the Bad Boys, had climbed through their own furnace of setbacks and narrow defeats. Their style stressed collective force, rugged screens, hard closeouts, and a defensive code that prized contact. Los Angeles recognized the threat. To meet it, Riley emphasized what he had always preached: rebounding as currency, conditioning as insurance, and poise as the deciding edge. Practices leaned into repetition. Film sessions slowed the game down until new solutions emerged. The Lakers refined end-of-quarter sets, tightened sideline-out plays, and drilled late-game rebounding positioning again and again. Angles became outcomes. The 1989 NBA Finals arrived like a collision of eras. Detroit's defense pressed into the Lakers' seams. Magic and Worthy fought through aches and tightness. The ball still moved, but space came at a cost. What had once felt like a smooth runway often felt like cobblestone. A minor injury here, a missed rotation there, and the series tilted. The Pistons swept the Lakers, a jarring result that echoed throughout the organization. For the first time in years, The Lakers' blueprint looked vulnerable against a hardened physical design. In defeat, however, there was information. The team took stock of health, depth, and the evolving geometry of the league. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's retirement closed a chapter unmatched in longevity. His final season had been a farewell tour, arenas rising to honor the skyhook that had outlasted trends, coaches, and schemes. The Lakers honored him with gratitude and admiration. In practical terms, his departure altered the Lakers' balance. They lost a reliable post touch, a steady source of points that stabilized possessions, and the long shadow of a leader whose calm had guided locker rooms for nearly 2 decades. The question ahead was not whether the Lakers still had talent. They did. The question was whether they could construct another winning shape fast enough to meet a league that refused to pause. Magic Johnson embraced the burden with characteristic calm. He leaned further into positionless leadership, a conductor who could tilt the floor any direction depending on need. If the game demanded strength, he posted smaller guards. If it demanded speed, he sparked early offense off rebounds. If it demanded patience, he ran half-court actions sharp enough to cut through resistance. Worthy carried more scoring responsibility, his mid-post footwork threading defenders at difficult angles. Scott and A.C. Green steadied the nightly flow with spacing, rebounding, and routine effort, the kind of habits that do not scream but never stop speaking. The Lakers recentered themselves on execution. Pat Riley, too, faced a crossroads. His voice had been the soundtrack of Showtime's rise and its peak. Players respected his standards. The city admired his steel. Yet even the best systems need fresh air, and even the most successful partnerships strain under the weight of high expectations. After the 1989 season, Riley returned for 1990, seeking to pivot through adjustments rather than overhaul. The Lakers still won. They still moved as one in the moments that required clarity. But the West grew tougher in the margins. Matchups mattered in new ways. Rotations demanded different lengths. Where once the Lakers could impose their will, now they often had to persuade it. In the 1990 postseason, the Lakers encountered an opponent that flipped the season's rhythm. The Phoenix Suns played with a modern brightness, quick to space, quick to rise, quick to punish hesitation. Possessions turned on half steps, and Los Angeles discovered that playoff series can be lost not by failing, but by falling just a little short too often. The second-round exit signaled something deeper than disappointment. It was a milestone measuring how far the rest of the league had moved to catch, and sometimes past the standard the Lakers had set. Change does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it simply arrives. The 1991 season offered another chance, and the Lakers seized it with pride. A new voice, head coach Mike Dunleavy, brought a different cadence to familiar personnel. Los Angeles advanced through the West, rediscovering collective sharpness and the layered reads that once defined their best possessions. In the NBA Finals, they met a rising power, the Chicago Bulls, whose blend of length, pressure, and ruthlessly precise offense had begun to rewrite the league's priorities. The Bulls won in 5 games. For Los Angeles, the series was less about surrender than about continuity reaching its horizon. Showtime had not vanished. It had completed its cycle. Adaptation is not only tactical, it is emotional. Over the years, the Lakers had grown together, suffered together, and succeeded together. Trust made their fast breaks dangerous and their late-game sets steady. That trust did not evaporate just because new champions emerged. Instead, it took on a reflective quality. In film rooms and quiet flights, the team understood that their style had stretched the sport and that the sport now lived inside the space they helped create. Every team that spaced the floor for early threes, every wing who attacked off a secondary action, every big who pivoted from post anchor to facilitator, each carried a measure of showtime in their play. The end of an era in basketball is rarely a single event. It is a gradient. For the Lakers, the gradient passed through farewells and recalibrations. Kareem's retirement changed their center of gravity. Riley's departure after 1990 changed their voice. New coaching meant new phrasing of ideas that were, at heart, still about spacing, timing, and trust. Even as the Bulls built their story and others chased them, Los Angeles remained part of every conversation about excellence. They had become a reference point, not a relic, proof that a team can be remembered for how it played as much as for what it won. The cultural imprint of the Lakers did not fade with the standings. The Forum remained luminous, home to memories that felt close enough to touch. Fans still arrived early to watch warm-ups. Television packages still sought out the glow of Los Angeles. On talk shows and in living rooms, the conversation about style versus substance slowly yielded to a more accurate conclusion. Style can be substance when guided by discipline. The Lakers had proven that, and even in seasons when the final score disappointed, the blueprint still looked sound to anyone who knew what to watch. Looking back, the challenges at the end of the 1980s did not diminish Showtime, they clarified it. They showed that a philosophy built on joy could endure pressure, that a team of stars could lean into role clarity without losing personality, that a city's reflection on a court could include grit as easily as glamour. The Pistons taught the Lakers that resistance is a teacher. The Suns and Bulls taught them that innovation is not a threat, but a reminder to keep moving. In the end, adaptation became a final gift of the era, a lesson that great teams learn even from their hardest nights. When we watch contemporary contenders recalibrate, balancing speed with strength, spacing with rebounding, highlights with half-court poise, we are seeing the closing lessons of Showtime in action. The late 80s Lakers learned that keeping an identity alive often means reshaping it. Many modern champions win by doing the same. Challenges arrived, and the Lakers met them with craft and composure. They adjusted pace, rebalanced roles, and honored a legend on his way out. Showtime did not end. It evolved. In that evolution is a quiet triumph, the knowledge that a style can bend without breaking and still light the court. Chapter 6. The Legacy of Showtime. The legacy of Showtime is larger than the scoreboard. It is a map of how basketball learned to be beautiful and still win. The Lakers of the 1980s showed that speed and flair can be disciplined, that pace can be purposeful, and that a city's identity can live on a hardwood floor. When people talk about the era, they remember the fast breaks and the skyward finishes. They also remember trust. The ball moved because teammates believed in one another. The arena glowed because preparation was unshakable. The legacy begins with style. It stays because of substance. Showtime gave the league a language for joy. Teams had run before, teams had entertained before. The Lakers made entertainment a system. Practice taught spacing. Spacing taught flow. Flow taught confidence. A possession began with a rebound, yet already contained a plan. Wings filled lanes. The guards scanned the floor. The big trailed with purpose. The choreography felt loose to the eye. In truth, it was tightly learned. Television found a perfect partner in this rhythm. Live broadcasts captured the length of the floor like a stage. Replays taught fans how a split second becomes a passing lane. The Forum became a set. The court became a scene. The game became something viewers anticipated like a premiere. Ratings rose, markets responded. A league learned the power of story told through speed. The rivalry with the Celtics shaped the narrative spine of the decade. East and West offered contrasts that felt like chapters in a longer book. The Celtics stood for tradition and resolve. The Lakers stood for motion and light. Their clashes carried tension that helped the league travel from city to city inside living rooms. A rivalry can be narrow. This one widened the sport. Showtime also reframed the point guard's job. A guard could be tall, a guard could post, a guard could rebound and still be a guard. Vision became a position by itself. The pass was not a final option. It was the first idea. Coaches at all levels took notes. Players who might have been shaped into one lane were now encouraged to see the entire road. Big men learned new habits as the floor widened. Centers trailed into transition for deep seals. Forwards became finishers in space and short passers in the mid-post. The game asked them to run. The Lakers helped them answer. The skyhook remained a pillar. Footwork stayed vital. But the lane now connected to the wings like a living corridor. The paint was no longer a destination alone. It was part of a route. Defense within Showtime's glow deserves equal credit. Michael Cooper's posture told a generation how to guard without fouling. Help angles and early stunts traveled from film rooms to playgrounds. The best version of Showtime defended first. The break began with a contest and a secure board. A fast possession without a stop was only speed. A fast possession after a stop was proof. Pat Riley's imprint reached beyond schemes. He set standards for conditioning. He taught the value of sharp communication. He shaped roles with clarity that felt respectful and demanding at once. The sideline image was famous. The message beneath it was steadiness. Repetition builds readiness. Readiness builds trust. Trust lets a team play free without playing loose. This rhythm is still taught. Los Angeles culture amplified and reflected the team. The forum lights, the courtside hum, the rhythm of buses and cameras outside a late tip. It all gave the product a frame. Yet the frame did not create the painting. The painting was the work. The Lakers delivered sequences that still play in the mind because they are arranged with care. Show brings you in, craft makes you stay. Showtime helped open the league to the world. Highlights traveled across borders on nightly shows. Clinics and tours translated the language of pace and pass. Kids with a ball and a friend had a model for joy. The first step became a story. The extra pass became polite. The finish became a thank you. When the game crossed oceans, it often wore a smile learned in Los Angeles. Front offices noticed how style can scale a business when it sits on winning habits. Ticket sales grew. Sponsorships aligned. Broadcasts expanded in quality and frequency. Yet the most durable business lesson was quieter. Sustain a standard, and the brand becomes a promise. The Lakers' promise during Showtime was effort that looked effortless. That promise still carries value. The coaching tree that grew from the era is wide. Assistants became head coaches. Rivals borrowed sets. Later dynasties borrowed principles. Touch the paint early, space the weak side, convert defense into early offense, cut with purpose, pass with intent. These are not slogans, they are rules a team can live by. They spread because they work. Individual legacies deepened as the years passed. Magic's leadership became a model for connective stars. Kareem's longevity became a model for craft over time. Worthy's big stage calm became a model for readiness. Cooper's defense became a model for pride that speaks quietly. Fans recall trophies. Teammates recall habits. The habits keep showing new teams the way. The city's bond with its team matured. To wear purple and gold in that era meant you belonged to a neighborhood of noise and kindness. To a place where a look across the floor said, "We are running again." Communities build around repeated feelings. Showtime repeated the feeling that something excellent might happen on the next trip down. Hope is a habit. Winning teams teach it gently. As years moved forward, arenas changed, rosters turned, and the league evolved. Yet the idea that a team can be itself at high speed without losing its shape survived. Modern analytics gave names to advantages the Lakers had practiced by feel. Early offense creates efficient looks. Rim pressure opens threes. Passing targets fatigue defenders. The data nodded. The film had already smiled. Watch the best of today and you will see the inheritance. A tall ball handler directing traffic. Bigs who sprint and pass. Wings flowing from catch to cut without a pause. Coaches preaching pace with purpose. Franchises building brands on joy that is trained. The lessons of Showtime live in new uniforms. Legacies are not trophies. They are templates. The Lakers of the 1980s left a way to play, a way to work, and a way to welcome a city into a season. Speed served discipline. Flair served trust. The lights still rise. The ball still finds the open lane. The lesson endures. Showtime proved that pace can serve purpose, and joy can live inside discipline. Fast breaks, patient spacing, and trust turned the forum into a stage where details carried the night. The lesson was simple. Share the ball, run with intent, finish with calm. If this story helped you unwind or taught you something new, tap like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm you want more calm basketball history, and it helps us make the next relaxing basketball documentary for you. Take a slow breath in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 2. Exhale through your mouth for a count of 6. Repeat this gentle rhythm. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Soften your brow. Allow your hands to rest where they are. Feel the weight of the blanket or the chair supporting you. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 2. Out for 6. Let each exhale be a small release. If thoughts arrive, notice them and let them pass like a swing pass to the weak side. Bring attention to your face. Relax your eyes and cheeks. Move to your neck and throat. Loosen the small muscles there, down to your chest and ribs. Let the breath widen the sides gently. In for 4. Hold for 2. Out for 6. Relax your stomach and lower back. Soften your hips. Let your legs feel heavy and quiet. Release your calves, ankles, and the soles of your feet. Listen to the room. Notice the soft sounds that remain. Let them fade into the background. Take one last smooth breath in for 4. Hold for 2. Exhale for 6. Long and easy. Stay as you are. No hurry, no effort, only rhythm. In the 1990s, the Chicago Bulls turned winning into a rhythm the whole world could feel. Michael Jordan led with fierce grace. Scottie Pippen added length, balance, and poise. Under coach Phil Jackson, the triangle offense found space, while defense set a hard, steady floor. The Bulls rose, regrouped, and rose again, capturing 6 titles and shaping a global moment. Their games felt precise yet bold, a calm storm that taught basketball how to finish. Chapter 1. From Ascent to Breakthrough. Chicago began the 1980s with sturdy pride and few certainties. The team was respected, not feared. The franchise was organized, not yet defined. In a city that valued work more than noise, fans waited for a group that could make effort look like art. When a young guard from North Carolina arrived, the building's sound changed. Curiosity became expectation. Expectation became a weekly promise. The ball left hands with sharper purpose. Defensive stances lasted a breath longer. It felt as if a new voice had entered a familiar room and tuned every instrument before playing a note. Michael Jordan stepped into the league in 1984 and altered the court's geometry. He lifted in traffic without forcing speed, finished at angles that taught backboards new duties, and defended with balance that turned gambles into reads. Scouting reports focused on his scoring. The film revealed something wider. His pace disciplined teammates, pulling cuts into timing, and screens into convictions rather than collisions. A close game no longer felt like a place to hide. It felt like a place to execute. Opponents prepared for highlights. Chicago prepared for habits that would outlast them. The Eastern Conference was not a free runway. Detroit, rising with a collective spine, met Chicago's flash with structure. Drives found chests. Post catches met forearms. Second efforts found hands that arrived early. The Pistons taught the Bulls that playoff space compresses. Patience must be practiced before it is required. Chicago took the lesson. Film sessions slowed possessions to the breath. A late help became a story about the first pass, not the last. A turnover became an argument for spacing, not for heroics. The team began to see the same picture at the same time, which is what good basketball really is. In 1986 and 1987, the Bulls learned that resolve is built by struggle, not by speeches. Losing did not erase progress. It clarified it. Rotations tightened until they looked like instincts rather than orders. Box-outs were no longer applause lines. They were obligations. The ball moved earlier and the floor felt wider because decisions arrived sooner. Jordan still scored, yet how he scored changed. He cut without dribbling when defenders shaded his first step. He posted when guards hunted his elbows. He attacked only when the lane was prepared to reward discipline. The highlight reel kept pace with the blueprint. A change on the bench gave the blueprint new language. Phil Jackson, elevated from assistant to head coach, carried a calm cadence into noisy minutes. With Tex Winter, he translated the triangle offense from diagrams to daily life. The triangle asked for spacing and timing, for patience that turned into options. It promised no miracles. It offered angles. The design seemed modest in pictures and precise in motion. Make a strong side triangle with a post, a wing, and a corner. Balance two on the weak side. Read where the help leans and play into that lean with a pass, a cut, or a repost. From the seats, the triangle looked simple. On the floor, it demanded attention to small truths. When the wing was denied, the post flashed. When the post was fronted, the high-low arrived on time. Jordan's gravity widened the court for others. His willingness to move without the ball improved what he received in return. Scottie Pippen, growing into a point forward, started breaks from rebounds and steered half-court rhythm with patient strides. Horace Grant supplied strength, touch, and glasswork that did not require speeches. Shooters learned when to hold corners and when to slip into daylight. It was choreography that respected the clock. Defense turned the key when the offense met traffic. Johnny Buck's schemes asked for early help rather than dramatic recoveries. Pippen's length, set at the top of a trap or shading a star, made choices feel smaller. Grant's positioning closed lanes without chasing blocks. Jordan defended with quiet hands and quick feet, which is another way of saying he took pride in beginnings rather than endings. Chicago started to win quarters they once survived. Opponents discovered that an open look in the first minutes became a contested calculation in the last. The scoreboard recorded runs. The film later recorded why. The 1990 season displayed balance without alibi. Chicago could score in waves. It could grind when waves refused to form. Traps appeared when needed, then faded into honest man-to-man that won long minutes. Detroit remained an obstacle, and the conference finals extended the lesson plan. Frustration visited. Clarity stayed. The Bulls' notes read like instructions for patience. Trust the second side. Communicate early. Choose the strong pass rather than the loud one. These reminders did not change who they were. They changed how often their best version appeared. Habits traveled into 1991 with the kind of calm that makes confidence quiet. The ball left hands a fraction earlier. Spacing stretched defenses thin. Jordan chose moments with restraint, striking when the system opened a seam rather than hammering a seam into being. Pippen's surges broke resistance at mid-quarters. Grant steadied stretches with rebounds that began fast breaks and with mid-range touch that ended droughts. The bench carried minutes without drama. Chicago earned the East honestly, and the finals placed them opposite a franchise that had authored the decade prior. History arrived carrying both weight and invitation. The Los Angeles Lakers took Game 1, a reminder that final steps are steep. Chicago adjusted not by shouting but by honoring details. Game 2 delivered a sequence that felt like punctuation, a drive into the lane, the ball switching hands in flight, a gentle finish that treated glass like a partner. It was a sentence inside a paragraph about patience. The Bulls won that night, then kept winning, taking the series in 5. Confetti fell, shoulders lowered. A plan became a banner, and the banner meant that the plan would be tested again. That championship did not celebrate one man alone. It validated a system that taught a star to connect and a roster to finish. Jordan still closed, but he also opened, which is why his teammates' roles sharpened. Pippen's versatility became constant rather than occasional. Grant's reliability turned into the rhythm of possessions. Shooters learned that a corner three could be a quiet roar. The triangle took root, and defense watered it. The city felt the difference between noise and music. Winning changed Chicago's temperature. Winter hardened sidewalks. June warmed them with shared purpose. The old building glowed like a stage. Families walked in wearing colors that felt like community rather than costume. Kids lowered hoops and practiced bank shots from odd angles, studying how glass forgives. Coaches in small gyms drew triangles on whiteboards with the patience of teachers. A city built on industry admired how a passing lane could honor work. The summer after a first title can break focus. Chicago chose steadiness. Conditioning became a promise, not a punishment. Film study sought clarity, not cleverness. Coaches adjusted responsibilities without rewriting identity. The roster listened because belief had been earned and then kept. Repetition turned habits into reflex. The team that hardship shaped now chose hard things before they were necessary. Sharper cuts, earlier calls, cleaner box-outs, small requests, large outcomes. The first climb's legacy lived beyond the trophy case. It taught that structure and star power can share a page without arguing. It taught that defense will carry a team across nights when shots wander. It taught that pace can serve purpose rather than replace it. It also warned that a banner raises expectations more than it changes the rules. The same stances still matter. The same passes still create breath. Humility still opens games the right way. The league prepared its reply. Opponents denied entries, bumped routes, and shaded coverage toward Jordan's first move. Chicago prepared counters. The ball found the weak side faster. The post catch arrived a step deeper. The repost returned without pride. Practices turned the first 10 seconds of possessions into language that could be spoken under stress. Patience was not passive. It was active attention that arranged pieces until the picture appeared. By fall, the Bulls were not waiting for validation. They were practicing it. Coaches trusted that breaths and reads would travel into May. Players trusted that the extra pass would return later in a better form. Fans trusted that the building would wait for a moment and then rise as one. A franchise found its voice and learned to speak softly, which is how confident teams talk. When fans watch today's contenders blend a read and react offense with switchable defense, they are watching Chicago's first breakthrough echo forward. The balance between structure and freedom remains a guide for teams that want pace to serve purpose and stars to connect rather than carry. Chicago's rise was not a trick, it was training. A star learned to share air with a system. A system learned to breathe with a star. Defense told the truth. Offense kept the promise. The first title opened a door, and the Bulls stepped through with quiet confidence and clear plans. Chapter 2. The first three-peat. The season after a first championship reveals what a team truly believes. Celebration can blur edges. Repetition sharpens them. Chicago entered 1991-92 with calm urgency, knowing that repeating requires humility and edge at once. The league had studied their films. The triangle's patterns would surprise no one. The Bulls did not chase novelty. They chased clarity. They practiced timing until it felt like breath and taught decisions to arrive earlier than pressure. If the first banner was a promise, this season would decide whether the promise could work under attention. Opponents tried to poison strong side entries, swarming wings and fronting posts. Chicago flowed into counters without pausing to announce them. When the wing jammed, the post flashed. When the post was fronted, a high-low formed. When that was pinched, a dribble handoff turned the corner. Jordan played inside the rhythm until the rhythm called for a solo. Pippen bent the floor by arriving early in space rather than late into traffic. Horace Grant sealed defenders into patient decisions. The bench preserved pace when starters rested. The regular season record sounded like music played well, not simply played loudly. Playoff basketball asked for layered answers. The 1992 East provided schemes in stacks rather than single looks. Chicago treated each series as a long conversation. The ball rarely stuck. Misses did not birth panic. Stops arrived in clusters. Every game included a quiet run built on defense that ended with a simple finish. People remember the finishes. The team remembered the stops. By the time the conference resolved, the Bulls had learned to wait for a moment and then hold it steady. Portland awaited in the finals with length on the wings, shooting on the arc, and a guard who could catch a night on fire. The series tested patience by design. Chicago shaded towards stars without forgetting roll threats. On offense, the triangle found post cuts that aged well, and corner threes that only appeared when feet were responsible. Signature moments traveled on broadcasts, yet the defining feature was steadiness. The Bulls won in 6. The second title settled on the city like a familiar song sung with a stronger voice. Between banners, the league kept moving. Spacing mattered more. Mid-post touches evolved into reads. Physicality remained a truth no team could ignore. Chicago updated the plan without repainting it. Practices emphasized reads under fatigue. The training room partnered with the court, lengthening seasons with care. Veterans taught cadence to younger players. Staff added wrinkles to familiar sets rather than forcing novelty. The Bulls adjusted like a good editor, removing noise, sharpening meaning, keeping pace with purpose. The 1992-93 season unfolded with quiet determination. Jordan carried scoring loads without separating from structure. Pippen's all-around game stitched possessions together from rebound to secondary break to half court. Grant kept extra chances alive with glasswork that felt inevitable. The bench absorbed matchups without complaint. Chicago won with surges when games allowed speed, and with patience when they refused it. The standings did not shout. The film nodded. It showed a team that made first-quarter choices that improved the last 5 minutes. The playoffs asked for both speed and stillness. Chicago advanced through the East and met Phoenix in the finals, a team powered by a relentless forward and a pace that tried to stretch even prepared defenses. The series tilted back and forth like a well-fought conversation. Chicago's answers came from the same source as always. Spacing created choices. Trust created calm. A star finished the plays that needed finishing, and role players finished the plays that required quiet. In June's bright heat, the Bulls stayed cool. A signature road game showed how courage and composure share a possession. The clock was managed without fear. The floor was spaced without hurry. Chicago defended without fouling and took a corner jumper that belonged to patience instead of impulse. The shot found the net. The moment found a place in memory. The series ended with a third straight title. The locker room exhaled as one, and the calendar quietly moved forward. 3 banners changed the air around the team. Success shines, it also weighs. Days got louder, travel heavier, quiet more valuable. The Bulls faced a new challenge that a box score cannot measure. It lives in the schedule and in headlines. Fatigue moves from legs to minds if you let it. Chicago tried not to. Minutes were managed. Expectations were acknowledged. Then a decision approached that would move the league and lower the volume everywhere at once. Jordan's first retirement sent stillness through the sport. The choice was personal and respected. It rippled beyond the court into the ways people measure seasons and stars. Chicago prepared to compete through structure and defense while the future clarified. Teammates accepted larger roles. Coaches adjusted emphasis without abandoning principle. The league remembered that eras can pivot, not with a loss or a win, but with a sentence that changes math and mood. The first three-peat closed a door and framed a hallway. It proved that a read-and-react offense can survive attention. It proved that defense and discipline anchor a dynasty against varied styles. It proved that leadership is measured by when to attack and when to connect. The Bulls became more than champions. They became an example of how to repeat without repeating yourself. Those seasons live in banners and in smaller truths. They live in a well-timed cut that made a lane honest, in a box out that let a guard run, in a ball reversal that turned a good look into a better one. They live in a quiet reminder from a coach that breath matters as much as bounce. Cameras often missed these moments. The scoreboard did not. This is how a team's identity becomes a steady climate rather than a brief forecast. Other teams noticed. Front offices and benches borrowed principles. They saw an offense that offered structure and choice together. They saw a defense with simple rules that could be obeyed under noise. They saw a star willing to connect and role players willing to assert. The league drew closer to a standard. New eras wrote their chapters using familiar sentences about spacing, timing, and trust. Chicago used the quiet after the third crown to honor work and accept change. They did not claim permanence, only proof. The three-peat stood as achievement and instruction. If the next path would start from a different place, they could still carry the same compass. A belief that the ball will find the open man will find the moment, and the moment will find the game. Contenders that chase back-to-back titles study the Bulls for sequence and patience. Keep identity steady, evolve details faster than the league can catch them. Trust an offense that breathes, and a defense that speaks early so it can stay strong late. The model still fits modern rooms and modern runs. Three banners do not rise by accident. They lift on work done daily, on spacing practiced in quiet gyms, on defense chosen when fatigue whispers no. Chicago's first three-peat steadied hands and set a path. The next summit would ask for new steps, but the compass would remain the same. Chapter 3. Intermission and the Return. Chicago's first three-peat did not end a story. It turned a page. The city had learned how a system could hold a star and how that star could hold a system. Then the room went quiet. The announcement that followed changed the league's air, and the Bulls faced a season where identity would be asked to stand on its own. A champion's strength is easier to see with a confetti backdrop. The next test appears when the floor is clean and the night is ordinary. The roster did not turn away from the work. Phil Jackson and his staff kept the triangle's language clear, precise, and calm. Scottie Pippen stepped forward with the same stride he used on the break. He became the team's compass, pointing possessions toward good choices and long runs toward patience. Horace Grant steadied the middle with rebounds and timely touch. Tony Kukoc supplied length and creativity from the wing, a connector who could pass in tight spaces. B.J. Armstrong kept the rhythm. Bill Cartwright's voice and presence still mattered, even as minutes shifted. The point was not to imitate, it was to continue. The 1993-94 season asked the Bulls to prove that structure was not the shadow of a single scorer. They answered with defense that spoke early and offense that trusted the second side. Pippin led with poise. He also competed with edge. The ball moved from strong to weak, then back to strong when feet were ready. The team won without noise. On long road weeks, they leaned on simple rules. Talk on defense, cut with purpose, find the open man, then become the open man. The crowd still rose in the fourth quarter. It rose for a different kind of surge. Playoffs are a mirror that shows details clearly. Chicago's reflection was honest. They could guard in space, they could grind late clocks, they could build a lead on sharp possessions. They could also feel how thin margins become when a signature finisher is missing. The series that ended their spring carried both dignity and instruction. The lesson was not despair, it was depth. Add one more reliable rebound. Add one more downhill dribble that bends coverage. Add one more voice that steadies a huddle when whistles go quiet. The summer arrived with changes. Horace Grant left and the front court balance shifted. Chicago responded by searching for size, force, and an edge that could live inside structure. Steve Kerr joined to give the spacing and timing a clean sound at the arc. Luke Longley provided size and passing touch in the middle. The triangle welcomed their traits easily. The goal remained the same. Keep the ball alive. Keep the defense moving. Keep the team connected through choices that ask more from all five than from anyone. The 1994-95 season began with resolve. Pippin's versatility stayed central. Kukoc grew more comfortable as a secondary creator who could bring the ball up or finish a broken play with a soft jumper. Armstrong balanced pace. The defense kept its rules honest. Through winter, Chicago stayed competitive, yet the gaps were visible. The team could hold the rope. It needed one more hand to pull. Then the city felt a turn. The league felt it too. A quiet message became a loud idea, first in practice, then in a game where the familiar gate crossed the timeline. The return did not erase the work that others had done. It honored it. Michael Jordan stepped back onto the floor and into a system that had continued to breathe. Conditioning needed time. Timing needed a few weeks. The competitive center needed no reminder. Teammates adjusted by doing what good teammates do. They kept making the right choices, and the right choices made room for speed to return. Spring accelerated. Chicago pushed into the 1995 playoffs with momentum that was real and incomplete. The roster had shape. The star had rhythm. The edges still needed to harden. A second-round exit delivered clarity. The group felt which possessions had to become automatic by next year. The coaching staff wrote notes about matchups and rotation timing. Management looked at a board filled with names and asked a bold question. Could the team find a forward who would change the math on the backboard and inside the paint while accepting the rules that made the triangle work? The answer arrived with a reputation and a relentless motor. Dennis Rodman came to Chicago with a record of rebounding that turned misses into possessions and energy that bent games. The decision asked for trust from all sides. Phil Jackson's staff believed that structure could hold personality as long as the work stayed central. Jordan and Pippen believed that a teammate who mastered a narrow lane could expand the team's highway. Rodman believed that roles can be large if they are performed with purity. The triangle did not need him to shoot. It needed him to screen, to pass quickly, to rebound with purpose, and to defend with attention. Training camp before 1995-96 looked like an orchestra tuning. Longley's touch from the elbow harmonized with baseline cuts. Kerr's feet arrived early in corners. Kukoc floated between connective tasks. Pippen pressed the gas in transition and read the floor in half court. Jordan's conditioning sharpened into familiar precision. Rodman ran to the glass as if a clock had asked him a personal question. The coaches raised the standards in subtle ways. Sprint the floor even when the ball is behind you. Talk through switches like people who measure trust by volume. Make the next pass an easy catch. The rules were not new. The attention was. The regular season that followed became a study in consistent pressure. Chicago defended possessions as if everyone could decide a game. They turned steals into simple finishes. They turned rebounds into early offense that did not hurry. The triangle sang in small ways. A post split here, a blind pig there, a flare that moved a helper out of the lane. Kerr's spacing turned drives into layups for others. Pippen guarded the tallest threat and the fastest threat on different nights, switching with economy. Jordan finished because everyone else began. Rodman filled the column that most people see last and coaches see first. The arena felt the rhythm. The league felt it too. Records do not set themselves. Teams set them. Chicago stacked wins by repeating habits that do not tire. They absorbed back-to-backs by leaning on defense that does not travel with heavy luggage. They handled trap games with patience that treats every quarter as important. When challenges appeared, the response was rarely loud. It was usually a clean stop, a smart pass, and a finish that belonged to the moment rather than to a show. The standings grew, and so did a sense that the group was giving itself a season that would be remembered for its control as much as its success. Playoffs demand a new proof each round. Chicago provided it with focus. The first series tested attention to detail. They won by staying inside the plan. The second series tested poise when a game twisted. They won by returning to spacing and defense. The conference finals tested pride. They won by playing possessions instead of narratives. Each close moment ended with a possession that looked like practice. The bench supplied minutes that did not leak points. The Stars made choices that honored every drill from October. The finals felt like a stage and a routine at once. The opponent had size, talent, and a plan. Chicago met them with a standard that had lived all season. Jordan led with control. He created the finish without forcing the start. Pippen moved like a hinge. He turned defense into fast breaks and half-court into geometry. Rodman reshaped games by owning the glass and sliding through screens like a craftsman. Kerr, Kukoc, and Longley hit the notes they had practiced for months. The series tightened and then opened. A baseline jumper found the net in a moment that felt quiet and decisive. The trophy returned not as a surprise, but as a conclusion. What made the season remarkable was not only the wins, it was how the team treated ordinary Tuesdays. They approached small gyms and large arenas with the same checklist. Rebound as a unit, run lanes with purpose, trust weak side space, defend without fouling. Do not surrender 2 possessions in a row to frustration. The presence of a great player can tempt shortcuts. The Bulls refused the temptation. They made their greatness look like consistency instead of noise. The return also deepened roles. Jordan's scoring and leadership were visible, yet he kept the offense inside its rails. Pippen's voice grew even stronger, guiding young players through reads while accepting heavy defensive tasks. Rodman showed that a specialist can dominate a series by doing a narrow set of jobs at a level that makes the rest of the roster's work easier. Kerr revealed that a shooter's true craft is timing as much as aim. Kukoc reminded everyone that creativity can live inside rules. Longley showed how size and passing connect actions. Role clarity turns talent into a machine. The coaching staff guided the rhythm with a steady hand. Jackson protected the room from outside spikes of attention. Assistants drilled footwork and spacing until choices felt like muscle memory. The trainers kept legs fresh without bragging. The travel staff built days that felt normal. Organizations win when jobs are understood. Chicago's jobs were clear. The triangle was not a trick. It was a workplace. By the time the confetti returned, the Bulls had turned a quiet re-entry into a full new chapter. The intermission had proved the strength of their standards. The return had given those standards a finisher who did not need to force. The result was a season that set a bar for balance, for defense that starts everything, and for an offense that breathes while it scores. Chicago's path from stillness to statement showed how a dynasty can pause without breaking and then arrive without rushing. When modern contenders reload after roster shifts or mid-season arrivals, they borrow from this script. Keep the system alive so that a returning star plugs into motion rather than invention. Anchor with defense, glass, and spacing. Measure success by how ordinary nights look. That is how bounce back becomes rise again. The Bulls' return season felt like a lesson in control. Standards held, roles fit, defense spoke first. A star came back to a room that had kept the lights on and the work clean. What followed was not just winning again, it was winning with a rhythm that felt like home. Chapter 4. The second three-peat. The morning after a championship is quieter than the night before. Chicago woke from the 1996 title with a steady breath and a familiar list. Defend first, share the ball, run with purpose, and treat ordinary Tuesdays as the place where banners begin. The coaches spoke softly about standards. The players laced up with the respectful alertness of people who know how quickly a league studies a winner. There was pride, but it did not swell. It sat in the room like a useful weight. If the first return had proven control, the next task would prove endurance. Winning once is a climb. Winning again asks a team to rebuild the mountain and then walk it without looking down. The roster knew its roles and leaned into them. Michael Jordan carried the scoring and late-game choices with a calm that made pressure feel measured rather than loud. Scottie Pippen connected everything, pushing in transition and steering half-court with long strides and smart angles. Dennis Rodman arrived at the glass with a purpose that did not need a microphone. Tony Kukoc moved between tasks like water finding shape. Ron Harper guarded with length and patience. Luke Longley passed from the elbow, screened with attention, and gave the triangle a tall, steady post. Steve Kerr's feet reached the corners early. It was a familiar cast, rehearsed and precise. The 1996-97 regular season became a study in holding the line. Chicago defended without fouling and turned stops into simple finishes that did not tax legs. The offense breathed through the triangle's routines. A post split here, a corner flare there, a quick reversal that pulled help away from the lane. The team managed minutes, listened to bodies, and understood how to win by 10 without chasing 20. Nights on the road were taken with quiet hands. Back-to-backs were treated like assignments, not theater. Records faded into the background, choices stayed in front. The standings spoke for them. As spring approached, the Bulls prepared for crowded floors and closer whistles. Practice tracked details that matter more when space shrinks. Guards drilled outlet angles to shave half seconds. Wings ran to corners even when the ball stayed high. Bigs rehearsed 1,000 seals that never made highlight shows and won 4 points every night. Coaches adjusted substitution lengths to keep pace without draining rhythm. The message was unchanged. Let defense decide energy. Let spacing decide shots. Let trust decide who finishes a possession when voices get loud. The first rounds of the 1997 playoffs rewarded patience. Washington tested tempo. Chicago removed air from games and finished breaks only when numbers were clear. Atlanta tested composure with physical lanes. Chicago answered with screens that bit and cuts that spoke. The Bulls moved through both series with a steady hand. The rhythm felt familiar. The city leaned forward anyway. Spring is a reminder that every champion must prove the same thing again. The roster did not blink. It checked the same boxes and then checked them again. The Eastern Conference Finals asked for focus against a rising Miami team that enjoyed hard contact and long arms. Games narrowed and then opened late. Chicago's defense shaded towards stars without surrendering corners. Pippen's length at the point of attack cut off air at the source. Jordan did not chase every moment. He arrived at the ones that mattered. Rodman tilted the floor with extra possessions that did not have a name on a scoreboard, but did have a number. The Bulls advanced with composure, turning noise into small, repeatable choices. The 1997 finals offered a new map. Utah brought a careful offense, a strong pairing, and a crowd that pressed in from the seats like weather. The Jazz ran a patient pick-and-roll that punished lazy feet. Chicago answered with early help and disciplined stunts that returned to shooters on time. Offensively, the Bulls used the triangle to move defenders, not to impress them. The ball touched the post, the weak side lifted, and the best shot arrived after the second pass. Games tightened and then found daylight late. The margins were narrow by design. In Salt Lake City, a night arrived that tested breath and belief. Jordan played through illness with a face that showed the price. The team bent its pace to his pace and guarded like a promise. Rebounds turned into long, careful strides. Screens were set with the kind of care that says we are all in this minute together. The shot that mattered most left his hands the way routine leaves a practice gym, calm, centered, and free of drama. Chicago took Game 5 and returned home with a chance to close. Game 6 told a different story about trust. The fourth quarter settled into a series of precise possessions where the triangle moved defenders by inches. Jordan drew attention, Pippen made a cut that taught spacing, and the ball found Steve Kerr at the top of the key. His jumper traced a clean line through air that carried 10 months of repetition. The moment spoke to the value of roll clarity. The horn arrived. Chicago's fifth title joined the rafters and the city's memory with the quiet certainty of a promise kept. The off-season brought fatigue and noise. Attention collects around a champion like dust in light. Contracts, timelines, and questions began to circle the room. Phil Jackson kept the door steady. The staff made space for recovery and guarded the routines that carry a team from October into June. Trust is tested in small ways, not just big ones. The Bulls chose the same answers they had chosen for years: keep the system clear, honor work, and treat every practice like a note in the story rather than a chore on a list. The 1997-98 season began with imbalance. Pippen's back needed time and care, and the roster opened the year without its most versatile bridge. Jordan took on more load without forcing tempo. Rodman owned the glass like a craft. Kukoc and Harper filled gaps with connective passes and measured defense. Bench minutes grew larger and louder than before. Some nights felt like inching across a narrow ledge. The wins still came, powered by defense first, and by an offense that saved legs by saving decisions. Chicago did not sprint through the calendar. It walked, counted steps, and kept score. Winter turned and brought help. Pippen returned and the floor widened. The triangle regained its full voice. Cuts found their answers. Spacing returned to timing that felt like a song the group had known for years. Jordan's scoring shifted from constant to selective. Rodman resumed his work of questions at the rim. Whose ball is this and how sure are you? The team did not chase a number. It chased shape. By spring, the standings reflected a group that had learned how to keep a standard alive, even when pieces were missing. The 1998 playoffs placed a new test in the conference finals. Indiana played with faith in its spacing, with shooters who punished slow help, and with bigs who fought long possessions without fatigue. The series stretched to 7 and forced Chicago to win possessions that were not designed for beauty. Offensive rebounds mattered like speeches. Loose balls turned into currency. The Bulls leaned on experience and deep breath. Jordan and Pippen guarded key actions, hands late and feet early. The bench carried minutes that felt heavier than the clock. Game 7 at home became a study in pressure without panic. The final quarter of that Game 7 turned on a small sequence that looked like a sentence fragment. A miss, a tip, another tip, a putback. The building's sound rose from the floor to the banners and back down again. Chicago did not pull away. It held. The horn sounded with relief and respect for an opponent that had forced the best kind of honesty. The Bulls advanced with pockets emptied and habits intact. The finals waited with a familiar opponent and a familiar climate of half-court defense and narrow margins. The 1998 finals against Utah delivered deliberate basketball where every cut had to say something and every pass had to arrive on time. Chicago accepted the pace without fighting it. The triangle moved a defender 2 feet and called that progress. Jordan shouldered late-game possessions, Pippen read the floor through discomfort, and Rodman contested space like a craft he had mastered in a different life. The series tied, then tilted, then tightened to a single night in Salt Lake City. The court looked small. The job looked simple. Get one more stop, one more score, and let the season exhale. Game 6 wrote the closing sequence that still lives wherever people talk about endings. A defensive stand arrived first, then a score to bring the night within reach, then another stand, the kind that begins with position and ends with hands on the ball. The final possession unfolded without hurry. A crossover created balance. A jumper rose with the calm of a drill. The net did the rest. The sound that followed was part roar and part silence, as if the arena and the season both paused to watch a sentence place its last period with care. The trophy returned, and the room knew the cost. Bodies had managed pain for months. Minds had answered questions all year. The front office faced decisions that felt like conclusions. Phil Jackson's time in Chicago reached its line. The roster's future scattered like pages placed into new binders. Endings can feel heavy even when they are perfect. The Bulls met theirs with respect. They packed memories with the same order they had used to pack road bags. They traced the triangle one last time on a whiteboard and turned off the lights. The second three-peat stood as a different lesson than the first. The early titles had taught how to rise and repeat. The later ones taught how to hold on under strain and win by control when speed is not available. Chicago's legacy added another layer, that a dynasty can adjust its method without losing its standards, and that a team can end with dignity after giving all it planned to give. The banners kept their places. The city kept its procession of stories. Today's contenders trying to repeat often study this stretch for proof that defense, role clarity, and late-game calm outlast schemes. Manage minutes with honesty. Let specialists be stars at what they do best. Build an offense that breathes under pressure. If pace fades in June, let precision carry you the last few feet. Chicago's second three-peat was won by control. The Bulls guarded first, trusted roles, and finished with calm when legs were heavy. The last shot closed a book that had been written with discipline and care. The dynasty ended on time, and its lessons kept walking into the seasons that followed. Chapter 5. After the Dynasty. The night the second three-peat ended, Chicago felt full and quiet at once. The banners did not move, the seats slowly emptied. The floor crews began their practiced work. Players hugged with the ease of people who had carried a plan together for years. Coaches shook hands in a rhythm that understood time. A city that had lived through parades and pressure exhaled. Endings are not always sad. Sometimes they are proof that the plan reached its line. The locker room lights stayed on a little longer than usual, as if the building wanted to memorize the shape of the moment before turning the page. In the days that followed, the future stopped being a rumor. Phil Jackson stepped away, his tenure closing with trophies and stories that would be told in small gyms for decades. Michael Jordan retired again, announcing a pause that landed like a full stop at the end of a careful sentence. Scottie Pippen's path pointed outward, first in sign and trade, then in new roles that carried his experience to other rooms. Dennis Rodman's time in Chicago concluded, his work on the glass now part of a lineage that coaches still reference when they teach rebounding with care. The roster that had fit like instruments in an orchestra case was suddenly a set of instruments looking for new songs. The front office faced a decision that organizations fear and also respect. Rebuild now and accept the climb, or cling to a past that cannot repeat itself forever. They chose clarity. Veterans moved on with gratitude. Younger players arrived with questions, and the franchise looked at its empty shelves and decided to restock with discipline. Chicago understood that the triangle was a language, and that languages outlive speakers. Even so, a language needs voices. The first years after a dynasty often feel like walking through the same house after the furniture is gone. There is space, there is memory, and there is the sound of your own steps. The lockout season of 1998 and 99 pressed the league into a shorter schedule and tighter windows. For a city used to long springs, April felt different that year. The Bulls competed as professionals compete, yet everyone could see the distance between history and the present. Fans still arrived, respectful and patient. The court still shone, the introductions still echoed, the ball still rose for the opening tip. What changed was the feel of the fourth quarter. Habits that once closed tight games with calm now needed time to grow. A rebuild is not a failure. It is a promise to the future kept in smaller installments. The early 2000s taught the franchise how to wait without drifting. Draft nights became the city's summer holidays, not with fireworks, but with whiteboards and quiet hope. Coaches emphasized defense and spacing because those are foundations that help any roster breathe. The United Center filled with a new kind of anticipation. Fans looked for small signs that the next shape was forming. A sharp closeout here, a clean rotation there, a guard who saw the second pass before he caught the first. The team's record did not always tell the story that the practices told, yet the work continued, which is how recovery becomes routine. Journeys back to contention rarely move in a straight line. Chicago cycled through combinations, learning which skill sets actually grow together rather than simply coexist. The franchise leaned on patience because rush creates waste. It also leaned on standards because drift creates fog. The identity stayed close to the values that had built the dynasty, even when the faces changed. Defend first, cut with purpose, value the ball, and let the open man be the right man. On some nights, the arena sounded like memory. On others, it sounded like construction. Both sounds can be honest. Youth arrived with energy that made winter feel short. The conversation around the team shifted from endings to beginnings. Prospects learned how to practice like veterans and how to treat film as a teacher rather than a critique. The locker room began to hold more questions about tomorrow than stories about yesterday. The city, loyal to a degree that surprises visitors, stayed close. They recognized the difference between a team that is searching and a team that is wandering. Searching has drills, wandering has excuses. Chicago chose drills. With time, the roster found a core that made sense together. A coach with a clear voice emphasized defense that speaks early and often. A point guard arrived whose first step could bend the floor and whose eyes could see a cutter half a beat before the cut began. Big men who screened with conviction and rolled with balance gave the offense a center line. Wings with length learned to be two-way players, not by chasing highlights, but by staying in stances that end possessions. The United Center's noise sharpened because hope prefers detail over volume. The return to relevance felt like the reopening of a familiar book, not at the beginning, but at a chapter that understands what came before. Chicago's defense became a daily habit. The offense found homes for shooters and lanes for drivers. The bench accepted its work as duty rather than as burden. Close games turned on rotations that were completed rather than attempted. Fans could point to plays that looked like the franchise they remembered, not in the stars alone, but in the shape of the choices. The team had found a standard again, and standards do not depend on headlines. No story of the years after the dynasty can avoid the truth that health shapes possibility. There were seasons when injuries moved the story in directions no plan had chosen. In those months, Chicago leaned on culture the way climbers lean on rope. The system kept games close. The defense kept scores honest. and the fan base kept perspective. When key players returned, the group returned to its shape with less delay because the habits had never left. A franchise cannot avoid turbulence. It can decide to maintain altitude. There were springs when the Bulls felt capable of reaching a conference final on defense alone, and nights when a single shot revealed what one more creator might have meant. Those outcomes were not failures so much as measurements. The organization learned what kinds of depth matter most in May. It learned that spacing is a product of trust as much as of shooting, that rebounding is a team contract, and that a star's best trait might be the ability to make a teammate's life simple. Lessons that had once been instincts had to be relearned, which is normal for any team that has turned over its roster. The community around the Bulls matured along with the roster. Youth camps filled with kids who knew the dynasty as history and the current team as their team. Coaches who once taught the triangle now taught principles that rhyme with it. Space the strong side, balance the weak, make the pass that opens the next pass. Television broadcasts highlighted the little things because the little things make the big things possible. Chicago's sports calendar made room for patient excellence, just as it had once celebrated urgent excellence. Calm can be exciting when you know what to look for. Front office decisions moved with a different kind of urgency, the kind that respects development while looking for windows. Some summers brought bold trades, others brought quiet retention, because continuity has a value that numbers cannot always capture. The Bulls remained careful about finding players who fit the room, not just the rotation. A team that expects to play deep into spring needs voices that steady as much as legs that sprint. The roster bent toward balance, the goals bent toward depth that could survive the calendar's small storms. Chicago's home court identity returned to something familiar. Opponents felt the building lean into defensive stops. They felt the crowd reward a second pass that beat a trap, a loose ball that beat the clock, a closeout that saved a corner three. The Bulls did not recreate the exact music of the dynasty years. They tuned their own instruments with the same ear for discipline. The city recognized the melody even when the tempo changed. Wins piled in clusters. Losses often looked the same, which is another way of saying the team knew which problems it still needed to solve. At times, the league's style tilted again, asking for more threes, more switchable defenders, and more bigs who could pass like guards. Chicago adapted without tossing the map. The Bulls invited bigs to handle from the elbows, encouraged guards to screen for one another, and taught wings to treat the middle of the floor as a meeting place, rather than as a destination. The team's best nights were not about one trend. They were about how trends were absorbed into principles. That is how a franchise tells time without losing its hour hand. The relationship between past and present settled into something healthy. The dynasty lived on banners and in stories told by parents to kids walking up the ramp. The current team lived on the floor, in the drills, and in the choices that turn a November into a May. When former players visited, the ovations sounded like gratitude rather than pressure. When current players heard those ovations, they sounded like invitations rather than demands. A city and a franchise learned how to hold history and hope in the same hand. By the end of the first full decade after the dynasty, Chicago had built a culture sturdy enough to absorb change and specific enough to guide it. New coaches could arrive and still speak familiar words. New players could move into roles and understand why the roles were built. Draft picks were evaluated for more than scoring. Veterans were evaluated for more than resume. The Bulls had not replaced the dynasty. They had honored it by using its lessons to build a different kind of excellence. The road back to June is long. The map matters more when you know how to read it. Seasons continued to turn, and with them the chances to make something lasting. There were playoff runs that ended with the sound of one possession hitting the rim and falling out. There were runs that ended sooner because the bracket respected no one's schedule. Through both, Chicago held its tone. The organization kept the word compete connected to the words prepare and recover. The players kept the word trust connected to the words talk and rotate. The fans kept the word belief connected to the words patient and present. That is how a sports city stays itself, through different rosters and different rules. The lasting picture of the years after the dynasty is not a single highlight. It is a room. The room has a whiteboard with clean plans. It has a rack of practice jerseys that smell like work. It has a trainer's table that matters as much in patience as in tape. It has coaches writing quietly, scouts calling politely, and players arriving on time because arriving on time is part of the job. Dynasties end, standards can continue. Chicago learned the difference and decided to live on the side of standards. When we watch current contenders rebuild or retool without losing their identity, we are watching lessons Chicago learned after its final banner. Keep standards visible, draft for fit and feel, defend as a language, and let history be a guide rather than a weight. That is how chapters invite the next page. After a dynasty, the best teams choose standards. Chicago rebuilt with patience, taught defense before applause, and found new voices for an old language. Not every spring brought confetti. Many brought clarity. The story did not end. It changed shapes, and the city walked with it season after season. Chapter 6: The Legacy and the Echo. The Bulls dynasty left more than banners. It left a way to think. The 1990s in Chicago proved that skill becomes system when everyone agrees on the same small truths. Space the floor. Trust the next pass. Defend without reaching. Finish with calm. The details spread from one locker room to another, and soon from one league to another. What began as a city's rise became a language that could be spoken anywhere a court offered lines and light. Legacy shows in how coaches draw. Whiteboards across the sport began to feature concepts that felt familiar to anyone who watched those years closely. Strong side and weak side did not argue. They worked like partners. The post was a meeting place, not a monument. Guards could cut and screen, forwards could handle and read. The shapes were simple. The outcomes were complex. Legacy also shows in how players train. Practices turned into laboratories for footwork and timing. Shooting coaches taught balance and breath before range. Strength staff shaped programs that valued durability like a skill. Film sessions learned to search for first causes rather than last mistakes. The Bulls had won by treating small things as big. Others took that lesson and found their own versions. The dynasty changed the point guard job without a press release. A ball handler did not need to be the smallest player. He needed to be the clearest thinker. Reads mattered more than dribbles. Pace meant pressure and patience in one body. You could lead by passing early and still score late. Teams at every level taught young guards to see the second pass before the first one landed. Wing play grew new branches. Length and versatility turned into a job description rather than a luxury. Coaches asked wings to defend the best player, start the break, space to the corner, and cut through the lane with craft. A great wing became a bridge between ideas. The Bulls did not invent versatility, but they staged it so well that others could study the staging. Big men learned to value touch and angles as much as size. The elbow became a desk, where a center could write a possession. A high-low was a handshake. A screen was a promise to a teammate. Rebounding was not a contest alone. It was a plan organized by position and pursuit. The box out could be beautiful when performed with timing and purpose. Defense took on a more organized voice. Help arrived early and left on time. Rotations were treated as routes, not as rescues. Hands were active, but feet were responsible. A trap meant 2 players working like a hinge. A switch meant 5 players agreeing on the next word in the sentence. The Bulls had shown how to win games that did not want to be won by offense alone. Late-game calm became an export. The last 2 minutes turned into a study rather than a storm. Huddles assigned roles that matched trust built in January. The first action moved the defense. The second action moved the result. The best player took the shot the offense had earned, not the shot his pride demanded. The crowd saw poise. The opponent felt it. The city's identity also changed shape in those years. Chicago had always loved work. Now it learned how work could look like art. Families who once told stories about factories and trains added stories about spacing and stops. Neighborhood courts filled with kids practicing bank shots and footwork, the quiet crafts that lift teams when the noise fades. A sports town became a classroom, and the lessons had long half-lives. Television learned a new rhythm for basketball storytelling. Cameras followed the full width of the floor to show how a cut on one side led to a touch on the other. Replays slowed to reveal the second of patience that turned a good shot into a better one. Announcers developed a vocabulary for trust. Viewers learned how to see a plan, not just a play. The business of the league evolved alongside the game. Consistent excellence showed partners that a team could be a steady promise rather than a weekly surprise. Tickets became invitations to rituals. Community events grew around practice habits and youth clinics. The Bulls demonstrated that identity can be a brand when it rests on habits that survive losing streaks and quiet months. International growth accelerated. Highlights traveled across oceans as postcards from a city that had learned how to win with craft and grace. Clinics taught footwork and passing in gyms where the lines were freshly painted and the nets newly hung. Kids watched a late game in Chicago and then dribbled on morning streets in faraway places, believing that timing and trust were skills they could practice. Leadership inside teams absorbed new rules. Captains learned to listen before they pointed. Veterans learned to explain sets with kindness and detail. Coaches learned when to speak and when to let a player speak. Staff learned that travel days are as important as game days if a season is going to hold shape. Organizations learned that consistency is generous. It makes everyone's job more clear. The triangle offense did not survive everywhere as a full script. Its ideas survived almost everywhere as a melody. Create spacing without begging the dribble. Let the ball touch the post to teach patience. Build actions that can be read by anyone who is paying attention. Do not fear simplicity. Fear confusion. The system had been a home for a dynasty. Its principles became furniture for many homes. Analytics arrived to name what film and instinct had already noticed. Early offense created efficient looks. Corner threes borrowed respect from rim pressure. Rebounds extended both score and spirit. Turnovers shortened both. The numbers offered mirrors to habits the Bulls had made normal. The reflection helped coaches explain why discipline works, and it helped players measure how to improve it. The dynasty's echo had a quieter chapter too. It showed how teams can end gracefully, without losing the value of what they built. The last shot was a period, not an argument. The city kept the lessons, even as the roster changed. The franchise learned how to teach its standards to people who did not live the banners. A culture survived because it was built on sentences anyone could read. Time passed, yet the images stayed useful. A measured huddle, a clean rotation, a pass from the elbow to a backdoor cut, a rebound that started a run without shouting, a star who waited for the right moment and found it. The clips are old now. The ideas do not age. They keep walking into new gyms with fresh paint and new names on the baseline. The legacy lives most clearly inside ordinary choices. Arrive early, make eye contact on a switch, throw to the corner because it is right, not because it is famous. Take care of the ball in the second quarter because the fourth quarter will need air. Run when tired, listen when certain, speak when needed. These are the rules that build dynasties and rebuild teams after dynasties. Watch the best of today and you will hear the echo. A tall guard directs pace with reads. Wings defend two positions and still cut for a layup. Bigs pass from the elbow like point guards. Coaches design options, not orders. Teams that last obey details that Chicago taught the league to cherish. Legacies that matter travel as habits. Chicago's dynasty left a plan for how to play how to prepare, and how to finish with calm. The echoes still guide rooms far from the united center. Courts change, names change, and standards remain. The ball moves, the defense speaks, and the lesson stays. Chicago's dynasty showed how details become trust, and how trust becomes calm in the final minute. Structure held the stars honored the structure. Their echo lives in every clean cut, every simple pass, and every steady huddle that turns a tense game into quiet control. From Showtime's rhythm to Chicago's control, these dynasties taught the sport how speed and structure can work together. You can see their ideas in modern teams: motion offenses that keep the ball moving, bigs who pass from the elbow, wings who defend and create, and late-game poise that values the second action over the first. Watch today's contenders, and you will notice echoes in pace and space sets, switchable defense, and stars who connect teammates before they score. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe so you do not miss the next release. We publish new relaxing basketball documentaries every week.